Hi, it's Paul Vanis with GreatDad.com, and thank you for joining this special, extra, complimentary episode of Great Dad Talks, where we're speaking specifically about resilience and how to get it. And I'm interviewing different experts on resilience, mostly coaches who are talking about their success in helping people gain this very important life skill, how to bounce back from everyday challenges, big and small. I would invite you to also come and spend some time with me talking about my own approach to resilience and any of the issues that you have around fatherhood. You can find a scheduling link at GreatDad.com/go. Okay, see you in a minute. Hey, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and I'm here on my weekly podcast series. And this is actually the complement to my regular podcast where we're talking specifically about resilience. And I'm excited today to have Brad Chandler with us to talk about happiness and its effect on resilience. So welcome, Brad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I love the way you're called a happiness coach because it's written in our Constitution, right? That we're all interested in the pursuit of happiness, and that should be a number one goal. But I think you and I probably, as coaches, realize that for a lot of people, they get kind of confused with that as a goal versus everything the culture is telling us to search after. Money and fame and sex and drugs and rock and roll and all the rest.
For sure.
I find that a challenge actually in trying to communicate some of the coaching work I do is how to get people to spend time, money, of course, too, but really it's really the time and the effort behind learning some of the skills that you teach in your programs versus things where it's how to get rich quick. Do you find that a challenge in getting people to realize what the real important things are in life?
I think it's hard to communicate sometimes. I think you touched on this. A lot of people will get into business or start careers or whatever, thinking that if I get to this point, I'm going to find happiness. And this trick and the secret is that I can show you how to find that state that think you're after. I can help you find it today. And the chances of you then going and making $5 or $10 million goes exponentially up. So if you're not happy, you probably lack self-love. And if you lack self-love, then you've got some of these embedded programming from early childhood that are still ruling your life. And if you have that, like my friend Mark says, Mark Mincola, he says, you either fix it or the universe will fix it. And how does the universe fix it? Through disease, illness, or death. So if you've got some of these things if you're in a bad marriage or relationship, if your business is in chaos, if you have an addiction, if you have depression, anxiety, you're overweight, all of these are signs that something's going on because no one was born with any of those things. They're all learned. And that's just an indication that you've got something you got to work on, but if they're learned, you can always unlearn them.
Yeah, I love what you say about because I think we've all got it wrong, and you'd think after years and years of hearing about the importance of happiness versus money, and that happiness is the route to money, we'd get it, but that it is happiness first gives you the kind of the life skills to get to whatever riches are, however you define them. I mean, that might not be money; it might be knowledge or all the other things that are true. Can you talk a little bit more about what that happiness is? And I don't know if it's good to bring in resilience right now, or if that's part and parcel of the same thing. Some of these words are used kind of interchangeably because they work so much hand in glove.
Yeah. So look, I mean, what is happiness? I mean, happiness and joy go hand in hand too, right? To
Hmm.
me, to me, what is freedom? Freedom is you only get freedom one way in life. It's not through money. It's not through yachts. It's not through women. I tried all those things for 47 years. Everything you need to be happy, you have inside you right now. So what is happiness? It really is just connecting with yourself and realizing that you don't need anything else. There's nothing external that's going to bring you peace and happiness. The only thing is this connection with yourself. And once you have this, then like you can be happy with staying home on a rainy day. You can be happy doing anything. You don't need drugs. You don't need alcohol. You don't need anything external. So to me, freedom and liberation is not allowing anyone or any situation to be able to negatively bring me down. And how do you do that? Every fight you've ever had with your wife, your business partner, your kid has nothing to do with the actual argument at hand. It It has to do with something that happened years ago, and our brain is bringing that in. Bring that in because it's a safety thing. It's like, okay, you're making me feel this way. And when I was 6 or 7, something made me feel very similar and I was unsafe. So I'm going to bring that in to protect myself. Because what's the point in the subconscious brain? It's just to keep you alive. Your subconscious brain has you exactly where it wants you today. And once you convince your subconscious brain that no, you don't need that anymore because now you're an adult, everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's the first thing, is the realization, getting in touch with what those voices are saying. Is that part of your program, is to first get in touch with what the evolutionary process has told us to how to react, and
A
trying
hundred
to understand.
100%, Paul. So this is hopefully they're going to be the drop the moment, Mike. This is something that not many people teach, and literally probably 1/100% of psychologists and therapists and life coaches even know this. You've got a negative behavior in your life, and we could spend here 2 hours naming them, but let me just give a couple, like it's addiction, depression, anxiety,
Right.
you eat too much, drink too much, porn, whatever it is, right? This negative thing, it's your brain's subconscious brain solution to something that it thinks is even worse. The thing that it thinks is worse, though, is always, always, always an untruth formed through childhood that helped you get through a stressful time or a time when your needs weren't met. So what do we do? Yes, in my coaching program, what we do is we don't focus on the symptom, because the alcohol for the alcoholic isn't the problem. It's the underlying thought, what they think of themselves. So we go back and we figure this out. When did it happen? What are you telling yourself? And then we
Mm.
show your mind that it is untruth. And when you do that, a mismatch detector goes off and you actually rewrite the neural pathways in your brain. Guess what happens in negative behavior? It vanishes and it's gone forever, because now it has nothing feeding it. Again, no one was born with depression or anxiety or OCD. Something's feeding it. So we go back to what's feeding it and we cut it off.
So you don't believe that there is any kind of genetic component to this, that some of us are born with certain saboteurs or certain judging mechanisms, but that's all learned behavior
I
or
believe that
learned
there is such a
reaction.
small fraction. You need a microscope to find it out. You've heard this. Oh, alcoholism runs in my family.
Right.
Depression runs in my family. That's utter bullshit. You know what runs in family is the associated trauma from those things. If you're the son of a depressed person or an anxious person or an addict or an alcoholic, there is no way you have not been in traumatic events. It's impossible. It's
Yeah.
not the alcohol gene. There's no alcohol gene that gets passed. It's the trauma that that
Yeah.
alcoholic placed on you. So when
Yeah.
you can realize that, you can free yourself. You don't need any drugs. There's 100 million Americans right now on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety drugs. They have the same effect as a placebo, a 50% effectiveness rate. They don't work for the most part. Now, I'm not black and white. Do they help some people get out of a hole so they can do the work? Absolutely. But the vast majority of people don't need these things. It just makes the situation oftentimes worse with the side effects.
Yeah. Yeah. So you, in your work, you do just one-on-one, or do you do group coaching programs as well with your colleague?
We actually have a hybrid. So we each do. So Yvonne and I each take one-on-one, but we also each week have two masterminds in a group setting where we bring our clients in and we talk about some just amazing neuroscience and relationships and all kinds of stuff. So it's a hybrid. Do you have to go to the group mastermind? No, I've had people that never showed up to one and they've had amazing success. But it's kind of like the insurance policy. You make this massive transformative change over like 3 to 5 hours with us. And then you don't want to go, we get you out of that invisible prison. We don't ever want you going back and sticking around for a couple months in this with a group of like-minded individuals who are on the similar journey. It's just so amazing.
Yeah, I've having done group therapy, and do group programs. It's amazing how seeing this through, your problem through the lens of somebody else's issue, and hearing it through their way of describing it sometimes is more valuable than actually talking it through yourself. So what are the steps then that, I mean, in a macro case, like if somebody came to you and well, first of all, are the people who come to you, are they usually questing, like they know they have a problem and they want a solution, or are they saying, hey, I want to be happier, I want to have more freedom, I want to react better at home or at work, and those are all key goals for me, or are
All of
they?
the all Paul, all of the above. Like I have a big network of entrepreneurs. So a lot of times I talk about my $9 million worth of business mistakes that I made. and why I made them and why is my programming. I talk about how I smoked weed every night for years, how I used to drink, how my kids had behavioral problems, how I had 2 failed marriages. And people are just like, oh my gosh, because I tell them the reason for all of this is the same thing. It's those underlying stories I was telling you about, these untruths. I thought I wasn't worthy, but it wasn't me. It was my parents. It was my father, the way he made me feel, the way he hit me, the way he made fun of me. So once I figured that out, everything changed. And so I just share my story. I share my story. So you get some people that are like, hey, I want to be happier. They see me and they're like, what in the heck happened to this guy? Like, this is not the
Wants
Brad.
to know what he's having.
Yeah. Like he would show up at 4 o'clock at these masterminds and start hitting the weed pen. And now you're not doing that, but you're smiling all the time. Like, what has happened to you? I'm like, I found this inner peace. I found it was always here. I just told myself the lie that I wasn't enough and something was wrong with me.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the first step is really getting to that lie and trying to understand what that lie is. But then how do you, I mean, those of us who are very rational and logical, we can go back there and learn these things that happened to us and say, oh yeah, that was horrible. And I probably feel crappy about it because of that. But how do you stop then those voices from keeping coming back? Because they do keep on, they keep on trying to get into your head all the time. And in the work that I do, I'm usually trying to recognize them and then stop them, understand them, and then stop them, and then move on to a more positive response. But it's a struggle that we all, I think, deal with.
Well, it's a phenomenal question. I'm going to go back to what I was said a couple of minutes ago. The reason is because so few people know how to really do it properly. There's something called memory reconsolidation. So our brains have been around for 6 million years. And we've always had this ability. It's the ability to rewrite memories that were programmed in early childhood. So my mom at 5, I'm making this up, at 5 years old, she doesn't give me a cookie. I say I hate her. She cries for 2 hours, and then dad comes home and spanks me and says, don't you ever make mommy feel that way. So what do you learn as a kid? What's the learned emotional behavior? If I'm my authentic self and I'm being the person I want to be, mommy will take her love away, daddy will spank me, and therefore my primitive brain says I might get kicked out of the tribe and I die. So fast forward 25 years, and this little Johnny is now married and he's in counseling because every time his wife says something, he shuts down, literally runs out of the room and shuts down because his mind says, if I open up, she'll stop loving me and she'll leave me. The therapist wants to focus on, well, let's do some breathing techniques. Let's tell you how to hold her hand. None of that stuff works because what you said, Paul, is yes, the voice in his head keeps saying this.
Right.
What we do though is we show him, we get him into that state of feeling that. So we literally like agitate it. We say, let's go back to that moment when you felt that way. Now the neurons become labile, which means they become loose, they become changeable. And then we show little Johnny, who's now 25 or 45, whatever, we show him times in his life when he was authentic and love wasn't taken. And then this is the survival thing. The mismatch detector starts going off, ding, 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 ding in our head. And that's when we rewrite the neural pathway. So now that thought is literally banished. So now when his wife comes to him, he can actually open up because he knows she's not going to run out on him. But so few people know how to do this. And you ask why? Well, when Freud died up until 100 years after his death, they thought that program, that if I am myself, people will stop loving me, was emblazoned in your brain. You couldn't change it. It wasn't through neuroscience around 2000, 2004, where they learned that this could be changed. Well, now you might say, well, I'm sure they're teaching that in psychology courses. No, they're not. They're teaching the same shit they've taught for 25 years, 100 years, sorry. So the same things just keep going on and on. Let's focus on the problems. Why can't you talk to your wife? They don't go to the root because little Johnny never had problem talking to his mom up until the time where she started crying because she couldn't handle it emotionally because of her childhood, and daddy came home and spanked him.
Yeah. Well, the advances in neuroscience are just phenomenal in the last 25, 30 years. I mean, that's just the idea that it's just shocking to me that in my lifetime, we went from not believing that the brain was possibly able to regenerate at all to now my sister-in-law just had a stroke and she's in the hospital right now. And they're not saying, oh, it's done. Her brain is fried. They're saying, the next steps are getting her better and then getting into rehab and fixing her brain, and
That's
it's
awesome.
miraculous. And I totally am with you on the fact that we can rewire our brain, not only in big ways, but in these small ways. But okay, so we established that we kind of relive that experience, and we learn well, we teach the brain, or we learn to have it, to shift our perspective on that experience. Do you find that it requires then ongoing habit redevelopment to keep that going, or is everybody always at danger of like it coming back to them, those old
Uh,
voice, familiar patterns?
it's a really good question. So my past, I like that I in a 3 hour session in this Airbnb bedroom, trying to get my son help for anxiety, I stumbled across the fact that I blinked a lot when I talked to my childhood. And this performance coach said, you should come out and work with my ex-Navy SEAL husband. And I did. And my life forever changed. That was 3.5 years ago. I have made such, if I'm holding up my hands, and if life is like complete brokenness here and enlightenment on the right side, and it's a foot away, I'm now closing my hands to like an inch. Like I made this enormous leap. Now I get to operate in this little sliver the rest of my life. Do I have times where I get aggravated or upset? Of course I do. And is it
Mhm.
all based on the original thought of I'm not enough? Yes. But now I can snap out of it in seconds instead of days like it used to take.
Yeah, yeah,
So the answer is yes. It's a lifelong journey. If anyone tells you it's not, they're pulling your leg, right? Because
right.
no one is enlightened. I mean, there are very few people that are enlightened in this world, and that's like true. Like nothing ever bothers you. So you mentioned before we got on the Joy Regenerator. So we have a tool called the Joy Regenerator that you get at our website that literally helps you through this process. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Now, literally, if I feel a negative emotion, I know that I'm in a fight or flight, and I ask myself, what is it that I'm feeling? Because it requires my prefrontal thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex. And if you think, then you get it out of the amygdala, the fight or flight. So I'm like, I'm feeling sad. And then I say to myself, it's okay you're feeling sad, because we didn't get compassion, most of us, as a 6 year old. And if you're feeling that emotion, by the way, it's not your 50-year-old self, it's your 6 year old self. So just think about a little 6 year old coming up to you and saying, I feel sad. What would you do? You wouldn't say, go put on porn
Yeah.
or drink. You'd pick them up and say, I love you. It's going to be okay. Then you ask yourself, what's driving this? And for me, it's always the thought of I'm not enough. So I ask myself, is that true? Of course it's not. I'm enough. So then I ask myself, why am I going to stay sad based on a thought that's not even real? Boom, I'm right back to my joy. It takes me seconds or minutes now. And
Yeah.
it doesn't happen often because I'm always aware that anytime I'm triggered, it's the old self creeping in.
Yeah. Well, I totally am with you with the fact that recognizing it is really key, and the fact that like you say, sometimes people who are suffering from this, they agonize over things. They replay the conversations for days and days on end. And I just had a unfortunate conversation just a little bit ago, and I went through that same feeling of like it's still there, like it's still there for like 2 minutes, but I knew what was going on and was able to put it behind me in that way. And it's learning these skills are, like you say, it's not a miracle cure. It's not going to get rid of it forever, but it's tamping down a lot of the stuff. Maybe tamping down is the wrong thing, because that sounds like repression, but it's making it less aggravated so that you can go on and live a more happy and productive life. Is that how you look at it? Or maybe I'm
Uh,
saying it in different words than you
I
mean?
would see, I would definitely say it in a little different words. It's like you take this enormous leap up in your
Right.
life. And then at times you want to be pulled back down, but now you have the tools and the awareness so you don't ever sink down to the levels that you were
Right.
before. I mean, I quit smoking weed. I quit drinking. I'm the healthiest as a 51-year-old. I'm active like 5 hours a day, yoga, lifting weights. I play pickleball for 2 or 3 hours a day. Like my relationship is amazing. My relationship with my kids has never been better. Like everything is better based on just figuring out that underlying untruth that was driving all the negative behavior in my life. Even my finances, Paul. Like I lost $9 million making 5 business mistakes between 2005 and 2017. I haven't made a business mistake. Like, of course, I buy a house and lose a couple dollars, but I mean a big one. Like, because now I'm not in business to make a bunch of money to prove my worth. I'm in business to make an
Mm,
impact. And when you focus on making an impact in people's lives, the money will come like
yeah.
more than you ever can imagine.
Yeah. Well, or whatever it is. I hesitate to always put the focus on money, but it's that it is that the return is
The
there, right?
return. Good,
I
good.
mean,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Well, so and then you have, I know on the site you have a self-love quiz. So that's a big portion of this too, right? Is not only seeing these past hurts, but maybe that's also tied in the same thing as those past hurts make you doubt yourself or doubt your worth, and you have to overcome that. I shared with you, I took the test. You told me I was a what did you say, a medium on the
Yeah,
self-love?
you had mild self-love. So there's extreme self-love, and then below that's mild self-love, and then lack of self-love.
Yeah.
And absolutely. So you mentioned change and awareness. You cannot change if you're not aware of it. Like if you want to break out of prison, what's the first thing you got to do? You got to realize you're in prison. So by taking this self-love quiz at unlocklimitlessu.com/quiz, 3 minutes out of your day, you're going to know, do you have some of these underlying truths? So if you've got a crappy marriage or you're drinking too much, you're overweight or business chaos, take the quiz. And if you're like, oh, I lack self-love, don't be like, oh, woe is me. Just the opposite. Think like, oh my gosh, this is probably what's driving all the negativity in my life. And if Brad can do it and 100 of his clients can do it and thousands of his mentors clients can do it, why can't I do it? There's nothing special about me. I just had someone that showed me a pathway, and now I've taken that pathway and kind of put it on steroids and studied under some of the best people. But yeah, start the journey today, take the quiz, see where you land, and just know that if it's at the bottom, you've got nowhere but up, and the change can happen fast. You don't need 30 years of therapy like I did. It can happen in a matter of like weeks.
Yeah. I've seen the same thing with the people in my program too. Is that I mean, I accept that your program sounds really interesting, and I love the perspective that you're taking, which is slightly different than mine. But a lot of it is really shocking how basic the steps are to that higher understanding, because we've kind of put it off continuously in the pursuit of, I don't know, being overly strong or being overly aggressive, or pretending we're something we're not in front of our closest friends. And we don't really get to that root. I don't know if you, I can't remember if in your, when you talk about living in the present and authenticity in your core values, I was kind of interested in that core values statement that you have on the website. That's at unlocklimitlessu.com, is right on there as the core values, because they seem to be like the 4, 5, 6 core concepts of what the study is on resilience: is authenticity, gratitude, living in the present moment, self-love, and then also very, very important is connection with other people. Quite often people who are really sad and are really in the hole and are not self-loving, not only do they not love themselves, but they don't love other people either.
Yeah, I mean, connection is really the basis of everything, right? When mom wouldn't give me the cookie, and I yelled at her or said I hate her, and she cried for 2 hours. It was so painful that we've got to disconnect from ourselves. That's the basis of everything. And then when we disconnect, we can't be our authentic selves. So for 47 years, Paul, I wore this mask. When I went out and I knew there was going to be a party and I had to mingle, or I was going to dance or sing, I had to smoke a little weed or have a couple drinks, because then it took the edge off and I was okay to be myself. I remember a coach I was working with before
Yeah.
I went out to Park City. It was part of the program. And I said to her, if you can just make me feel the way I feel high, not in terms of the highness feeling, but if you can make me have the same patience and confidence, and dancing and singing, I was like, I'll love you forever. She goes, Brad, that is the real you. It's just been masked with pain. And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh. And now I didn't really get it at the time, but since I've gone through the work, now I get it. Now I can show up and I can sing and dance and do karaoke, and I don't have to be drunk or high, because I love myself. And if someone wants to judge me, I now know it's them that feels bad about themselves and they're just projecting on me. That's true liberation that money can't buy.
Yeah, I didn't see the module on the singing lessons, but that sounds like it'd be valuable as well. Well, this has really been interesting, because it marries up with so much. I mean, there are a lot of coaches who are doing work in this area in resilience, and a lot of the concepts are very similar. And I think it's just really interesting, your approach, but also the fact that people have to find a coach that they feel comfortable with, that they have a connection with, that they believe the story that we have our own personal journey on how we found this, and we've had experience. I mean, I've run 25 people through my program, and they're all like, oh, I can't even believe how simple a lot of this stuff was and how life-changing it was. And I couldn't believe it myself. I'm a super rational person, and I would never believe, 5 years ago, before I became a coach, I would have believed half of it, except for the brain science. But I've seen the results.
Paul, it really is simple. I mean, we're not doing brain surgery here. We're just going to figure out what are the stories that you told yourself that you had to tell yourself as a child to get you through the shit. That's it.
Yeah.
That are still controlling you today. And then
Yeah.
because trauma always takes you out of the present. So we just bring little Johnny up to today and we say, yeah, you don't need mom or dad anymore. Any of the love that you didn't get, you get to give it to yourself now. That's the whole concept of self-love. It's not being conceited or arrogant. I don't
Right.
think I'm any better, but I also don't think I'm any worse than other people. I used to look at myself constantly and compare myself. I'm not perfect and I still do, but it doesn't consume me. I just think about it. I'm like, nope, my life is amazing. I'm good.
Oh, that's really an interesting point too. It seems like we're like in between these counterpoints between like a vision of masculinity that fights against the authenticity or the vulnerability, these different things that like what we think we should do versus what we really are, and we have to get to that other part and let those societal expectations go a little bit to really start loving ourselves. Like self-love,
Yeah.
like when you say self-love, a lot of people, like you say, would
Yeah.
think about conceit or arrogance, but that's not what it is at all. I
Not
don't
at
want to walk
all.
into a party and think I'm the most important person in the world, but I do want to walk in with the confidence that I am who I am, and I'm going to be true to myself, not pretending that I'm something else or feeling down because I don't even believe I'm as good as I am.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. All right, Brad. Thanks so much for joining us. There's a lot of wisdom in all this. I really encourage people to go to unlock limitlessu.com and do that quiz, because that quiz will give you a really good baseline, I think, of where you are and where the potential might be. I did not yet do the joy regulator, and I will look forward to finding that email. It may go into your spam, so people be aware of you. If you do sign up for it, you might have to look for it. One other question I wanted to ask you, because you have a colleague, Yvonne Trost or
Trust,
Trot
trust, trust.
Trost, and do you work with men and women at the same time, or only with men, or do you work in tandem with her with couples? How does that work?
So we do a lot of individual work, and it can be male or female with either of us. We have worked with some couples. I historically have worked with the man, and she's worked with the woman. And one
Yeah.
thing I didn't mention, if you like this type of content and you want more of it, I have a podcast called
Yeah.
How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. So check that out. It's on all the major platforms.
Yeah, go to the website, because you do a really good job. I got to work on my website, but you do a really good job at listing all the different topics right on the homepage of or at least on the resources page
Resources.
of all your topics that you've covered in those podcasts, and it's really easy to
Thank you.
access the ones that are the most interesting to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Brad. Brad Chandler with unlocklimitlessu.com. I'm Paul Baines with GreatDad.com. You can find my offerings. I don't have a quiz I do have a quiz on my page at GreatDad.com/go. So check that out as well. But it's more focused on resilience and fatherhood, which is the thing that I'm always working on. Okay, until next time, Paul Baines, GreatDad.com. Stay strong.